Sonic Mania is a breath of fresh air for the blue blur, bringing us a return to the classics after 25 years. Mania is a love letter to the Genesis days. It's a game that could entirely be mistaken for actually being on the Sega Genesis, or maybe on the Sega Saturn as a continuation of the Genesis games in the late 90s. The physics behind this game feel like they were ripped directly from Sonic and Knuckles. It's amazing how perfect the Mania dev team managed to reconstruct it. There isn't even any feeling of polish to how he moves, to the point that it's still a degree of janky to control, sometimes putting you in unfair positions, which I thought were great for keeping true to the originals. The only new addition is the drop dash, which seamlessly fits in as an essential ability to the game. Performed by holding the jump button again after jumping, it gives you a little spin dash burst upon touching the ground to make it easier to rebuild momentum in certain situations, which saves a lot of time from having to wait to completely stop to perform a spin dash every time you're stuck at the beginning of a loop. It truly feels like a mechanic missing from the Genesis titles that was desperately needed. I've actually ended up using it way more than the regular spin dash in my playthroughs. While the controls and physics stick to familiar grounds, the game's modern polish shines through in its visuals and animation, soundtrack, and especially level design. Despite having only a few wholly original levels and a majority of rehashes across Sonic 1, 2, 3, CD, and Knuckles, the choice selection of old zones provide enough of a wide variety in aesthetic and game origin to keep Mania from feeling stale. On top of that, the old levels are all completely redesigned, with such fantastic and unique ideas that it doesn't even matter that they're from the old games because they're so very different. Each level is such a huge maze that will leave you closer to the end of the 10-minute timer than any of the original games ever managed to do. There's so much to do and discover in each act. Even in Green Hill Zone, it's worth replaying 10 times over just because there are that many different winding paths and routes that you wouldn't have found during previous runs. The old zones add new mechanics and concepts that fit in thematically, sometimes adding in concepts from unincluded old zones. And the new zones provide a lot of original ideas that help spread out the very tiny sense of rehash from playing the classic levels in between. I especially enjoy the new uses for the elemental shields, allowing you to interact with the levels in different ways, like burning the spike bridge in Green Hill Zone or being magnetized to the ceiling in Flying Battery. And I absolutely adore the hard-boiled heavies as new coming antagonists. To be honest, they're some of the best character designs since, well, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik. The hard-boiled heavies really match the iconic design of the original Sonic characters from the Genesis days. Dispersed across all of the levels of Sonic Mania are references to the old Sonic games, nods to recent Sonic, and references to old Sega content in general. But the game never rides off of these references. Sonic Mania does not build its identity off of the wanted poster for Fang the Sniper in Mirage Saloon Zone, or the infamous annoying water corridor kept in Chemical Plant. While it does feature callbacks that put a big grin on your face to recall, and even though 2/3 of the levels are based off of Sonic 1, 2, 3, CD, and Knuckles, Sonic Mania still manages to build its own identity of passion, care, and loads of originality that accurately captures what made the classic games fun. I think this was one of the biggest fears of fans excited for Sonic Mania, afraid it would coast 100% off of rehash and callbacks to the Genesis days, especially when we saw the Green Hill Zone would be returning. But it's safe to say that Sonic Mania comes nowhere close to being a simple fan game that only reuses old assets. Sonic Mania is a true sequel after almost 25 years to Sonic and Knuckles. With nostalgic gameplay, beautiful level design, clever and entertaining boss battles, and so much more, Sonic Mania stands proud as a confident return to the Genesis era that fans have been waiting for. But hey, that's just my perspective.